So, this module again we will discuss about another two forms of IP. Last module we discussed two forms of IP, trademark and geographical indication, and this modules also we will cover two another forms of IP, that is IC layout design, and trade secret. Okay, so let's start with IC layout design. Okay, so if I ask what is the importance of IC layout, so you know today's context, the electronics devices and component have been growing, and people are utilizing the IC in different components, including mobile, others electronic devices, okay, that is used even for medical purposes. Okay, so what is IC layout? I told about IC or chips, integrated circuit, or let us say chips. Okay, so what is IC layout? On that context, I will ask you, when you construct a building, first foremost thing is, let us say, plan, maybe layout, then you construct the building. Similarly, let us say if you are design a product in a tangible form, before that you may thought about its engineering drawing in the form of a plan, elevation, perspective views. Okay, so then you generally build that article out of those planes. So, building of article, building of plans, or I am thinking about, let us say, building of a tangible object. It is easy. It will be easier if you prepare a layout or drawing of that object first, then you prepare that things. Okay. Similarly, let us say IC or chips. Okay, it has been fabricated. It is fabricated using different steps are involved in the fabrication of the IC or let us say chips. So, just like a building layout or building plan and elevations, articles, drawings and articles. Okay. Similarly, here that IC, just like let us say IC or let us say chips. Okay. So, how it is fabricated? Definitely you understood IC or chips. Why you use? You use for a specific function. Okay, you use those things for specific function. So, say IC and chips definitely is coming in the form of a tangible object. So, in the fabrications of that tangible object, say one of the components is also the design of layout. Okay, layout of that IC. Okay. So, how you are designing the layout? Maybe based on functionality you are deciding the different component layout, deciding the components, okay, deciding the components, then deciding their position, okay. So, based on this you are creating layout. So, layout will ultimately tell about the different components and their positions. Based on that you used different fabrications method, just like photolithographies, CVD, okay, and you prepare layered wise, you fabricate the integrated circuit or let us say chips. Okay. So, that there lies the importance of layout, okay, for preparation of IC or chips. Okay. So, now if you ask me where is the IP involved in the layout, yeah, definitely IC or chips is the product of intellectual contributions. Okay. So, intellectual contribution involved in the creations of IC and chips, and the layout is the intermediate steps to create the IC and chips. So, major intellectual involvement happens in the creation of the layout, because layout you are creating based on the functionalities, then you are deciding a particular fabrication method to fabricate that IC or chips. So, there lies the role of layout in chip or IC fabrications, just like a plan or layout for construction of the building. So, definitely intellectual contribution or creation of minds, or then I am considering that is a layout, and you are justifying intellectual property because they are also, it has utility. It has utility, it has value, and that it involves fruit of labors. So, ultimately you are thinking it is a form of intellectual property. Agree? Okay. So, now why it is required to protect by means of intellectual property, and why separate form of intellectual property is required. That part we will try to discuss now. Okay. So, now let us say what is IC. So, just I am taking the definitions from the book. Definitely you know that IC perform integration or integrated functions. Okay. So, IC is a miniature electronic circuit consisting of semiconductor devices as well as passive components. So, sometimes I used to tell it contains capacitors, transistor along with another circuitry elements. Okay. So, it involves and it performs what function? Electronic circuitry function, because electrical circuitry functions differ from electronic circuitry functions. And steps involved in manufactures or fabrication of IC or chips is first you deciding the functionality, I already told, determine the physical elements required, prepare the layout, mask work is also have to prepare, then you fabricate the chips. And IC layout is the representation of IC in terms of planar geometric shape, which correspond to the patterns of the semiconductor layer that make up the components of the integrated circuit. So, I already told you what do you mean by layout and what is its importance. Okay. Now, if I ask that, let us say this is a CMOS operational amplifier layout, that it is layout of CMOS operational amplifier. Okay. How metal layers are colored blue and green, the polysilicon is red and vice as crosses. That is the layout of CMOS amplifier. Okay. So, now why need protection for IC layout? Because that if you procure an electronic devices or electronic components, then you can able to identify the chip or IC. Now, you may do a reverse engineering process to find out the layout involved in fabrication or manufacturing of that chips. So, the person who has involved so much investment, including intellectual and capital investment for preparation of chips, including layout, its piracy is easy. Okay. So, that way chip piracy is easy. Enormous cost involved in design and development of chips. Pirate sells the chip at a lower price. So, let us say somebody invested a huge amount of money and another person is without involvement of his investment, he will definitely sell those chips at lower prices. So, that will ultimately deprive the actual creators to get return on investment. So, okay. So, then he will not be interested to do further investment. So, definitely we need protection of the layout. So, now why separate forms of intellectual property? Why not existing forms of intellectual property is sufficient to protect the IC layout? So, I just like say if you know I have learned now copyright. If I asked the building layout whether existing forms of copyright whatever I discussed will able to protect, definitely you understood the layout of the building required some sorts of intellectual contribution. So, whether which forms of IP will be appropriate for them? Definitely copyright. So, now again from the layout you constructed an architectural work just like a building, this is also copyrighted work. Now, the questions lies whether the copyright owners will get separate protection for the layout and for the architectural work based on that layout whatever architectural work has been constructed or constructed. I will say yes, because sometime from the layout say building has been constructed, but it will be difficult to enforce his right in the building part based on his right on the layout part, because if I consider layout, then he has the right on the right based on the layout part, right to adaptation, or as per US copyright law, right to create a derivatives work, right to create a derivatives work. So, it will sometime will be difficult to enforce the right based on the substantial similarity test using the right to adaptations. So, I think it will be prudent to take separate copyright for the layout and also the building in the form of architectural work. Okay. So, now similarly, let us say try to consider semiconductor IC layout where whether patent will give protection or not, or what is the deficiency in the patent for giving protection of IC layout. So, why not patent? I have written here. So, integrated circuits are composed of numerous building blocks, you understood that, each block being patentable. I told you it can be created in a layer wise structure and each layer may be patentable. Integrated circuit contain hundreds or thousands of semiconductor devices. A claim to integrated circuit would have to cover hundreds or thousands of individual elements. Consequently, patent claim that attempt to recite an entire integrated circuit may be hundreds of pages long. In respect of patent, you know that patent we require sufficiency of description, and in the description we have a portion called claim. So, here understanding that it contains a numerous buildings block, each block is patentable, and also that to describe the different building blocks you require a huge amount of description, and also you claim every elements presented in that building block. So, ultimately it will be tedious job for a patent drafter to cover every elements within a single patent specification, within a single patent specification. So, it may be hundreds or thousands of pages. Okay. So, that way that will be complex, cumbersome to write a patent specification with reference to that IC or IC that contain also layout. Okay. Although, if you ask me, people try to get it protected within the patent systems, because people thought patent is the forms of IP which can be more useful and which can be enforced. Okay. So, that part. Okay. So, there another part in Patent Act, that obviousness rejections, sometime one layout to another layout definitely may not be qualified to qualify the inventive steps criteria. So, then say another person who will create the second layout based on the earlier layout, that may lack the inventive step requirement, and he will not get patents on the layout, because the inventive steps you understood will be judged based on the prior art and the person's skill in the art. So, that way some way inventive steps requirement is also a sufficient lap over the existing prior art. So, that part may be lacking, may lacks in respect of IC layout. Another part is that you know that for to get a patent, present day people are discussing on that part. To get a patent, sometime it takes 3 to 4 or even more time, even any jurisdictions. Okay. And the life of IC on chips are very short, because the lot of invention and innovations are happening in electronics world, that makes the life of a chips and layout very short. So, ultimately 3 to 5 years if it takes to get a patents on IC, in that time its commercial potential will be exhausted. So, that is the say hurdles with reference to patent on IC layout. Then why not industrial design? Integrated circuit layout is more functional than ornamental, because you understand the IC layout design is considered the functionality of the chips. So, functional part does not cover under the design, and also what ornamental features involved in layout? Nothing. So, industrial design is not sufficient. Why not copyright then? Definitely also you know that it has also emerged from the copyright doctrine, and even sometime people told that in US people are still trying to protect it under the purview of copyright. Okay. Because the theoretical aspects suggested copyright that does not protect the utilitarian aspects, and functionality which type of articles are more functional, their copyright is extinguished. Okay. So, Copyright Office has refused to register integrated circuit topography, because they are considered utilitarian, because integrated circuit layout is mostly having utility. So, for that reason they have denied the registration of the copyright on IC layout. Again, another problem with copyright is that the period of protection is longer, life plus 60 years. So, if you that and I already told you that life of IC layout is short. So, means after life plus 60 years it will be considered as a public goods. So, that is not beneficial for the society as a whole, and ultimately the whom I am providing the rights on IC layout, the owners also will not get much benefit, because the life is only very short. So, definitely we do not require copyright protection on IC layout for life plus 60 years. So, for that reason that IC layout copyright also not sufficient for IC layout design. Then trade secret maybe, but another problem with the trade secret I already told you that reverse engineering is a valid defense in respect of trade secret infringement. Somebody developed a IC layout and he claimed that okay, I have developed that IC layout not from I have not from say without any contribution, like not like that. I have developed that IC layout using reverse engineering route, because reverse engineering is a complete defense to a claim of trade secret misappropriation or infringement. So, what option? Trademark? No. Why trademark? This is not a source indication functions. So, that way whatever the forms of IP we have discussed and just like discussed, that will not be applicable to properly protect the IC layout design, that lead to the creation of a sui generis forms of protection, one of its own kind. Okay. So, that lead to the development of Semiconductor Chip Protection Act 1984 USA. Then if you read the jurisprudence, that US, it has been originated from USA, subsequently in other countries, Japan, Korea. Okay. There is also say debate with reference to some provisions of the US Act between US and Japan. Okay. Then I understood that I do not require to discuss all those things now, but subsequently all other countries also have created a sui generis form of protection to protect either IC layout or mask work, just like Japan, Korea, and European countries also created some directives to protect IC layout design. Then subsequently the TRIPS has come up and IPIC treaties, okay, and TRIPS has provisions for protection of IC layout design, that lead to the say and India signs the TRIPS agreement. Okay. So, ultimately India has to enact say legislations related to protection of the IC layout design. So, we have Semiconductor IC Layout Design Act 2000 to protect IC layout design in India. Just like say, I will just give you some of the other features, just like mask work, just like as SCPA, Semiconductor Chip Protection Act, has mostly told about the mask work. Okay. So, now what is mask work? As you are technical graduate, take these definitions and try to imagine what it is. So, according to SCPA, is a series of related images, however fixed or encoded, see that fixed or encoded, having or representing the predetermined three-dimensional pattern of metallic, insulating or semiconductor materials present or removed from the layers of a semiconductor chip product, and in which series the relations of the images to one another is that each image has the pattern of the surface of one form of the semiconductor chip product. So, you understood a series of related images fixed or encoded having or representing the predetermined three-dimensional pattern. Understood that part? So, if I ask that layout and mask work whether both are same, I will say even from layout you are creating the another steps is called mask work. From the mask work you are creating the ultimately the chips. Okay. So, that way the mask work or IC layout, the two intermediate steps involved in fabrication of the chips, the different country try to protect either layout or mask work. Okay. The SCPA does not always provide protection to one or two dimensional pattern in a chips or two dimensional quantum semiconductor devices. Understood? So, that the mask work. Okay. So, now let us say you understood that IC layout design is a form of intellectual property. Clear? Why intellectual property? This is clear to you. And what is the importance of IC layout design? That is also clear to you. Definitely importance includes to prevent piracy, that I already referred, and in IC layout or design, the evolution of IC layout design as in the form of IP, a separate form of IP, that also we are discussing here. Ultimately, why not patents? You understood In that regard, you got to know even revised the criteria of patentability. Why not copyright? So, also you understood. Why not industrial design? That also you understood. Why not trade secret? Just like whether I can consider this as a form of informations or confidential informations. But what is the lacuna with reference to the applicability of the trade secret law to protect the IC layout design, that also you understood. Okay. So, then why not industrial design, you understood. Okay. So, now that lead to the what lead to the enactment of separate legislation for say IC layout design, that also understood. What is the jurisprudence? Somebody ask you what is the historical background for protection of IC layout design in India. Definitely you will refer the TRIPS provisions, and we have signed the TRIPS agreements in 1995, and during the signatures of the TRIPS agreement, India was treated as a developing country, and TRIPS provided 10 years window period for developing country to comply with the provisions of TRIPS. So, in TRIPS there are few articles have been devoted with reference to the IC layout, and they mention the country has to enact some legislations for protection of IC semiconductor IC layout. So, ultimately India has also created a legislations for the protection of IC layout design, that is Semiconductor IC Layout Design Act 2000, and they try to give the protection of by protection of IC layout. Okay. So, let us summarize the class now. This class now we discussed about what is IC layout, why it is IP, why separate law, okay, separate law, and how it has evolved, specific reference to the India. So, that was the this is the summary of discussion with reference to this class. Subsequent class we will discuss about the registrations procedure and enforcement procedure with reference to these forms of rights, specific reference to the India, as we are mostly discussing Indian provisions. Also sometime we are touching the others jurisdiction provisions also, but the mostly we are discussing the Indian provisions. So, next class I will discuss about the registration procedure of IC layout design with specific reference to the India.